eyes wide open.
So why do I always mention Appalachia and the Ozarks together whenever I talk about culture?
Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
Well, I do this for 3 reasons. But before I do that, I ought to explain a little bit more about what I mean by the Ozarks, because a whole lot of you are probably familiar with Appalachia, the mountains and the culture. The Ozarks is a collection of small mountain ranges found in southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, and western Oklahoma. And if you had no idea that there were mountains there, you're part of a big club because it's often called the Forgotten America. So then what do the Ozarks have to do with Appalachia if they're so far away from each other? Well, the first and most direct connection between the two areas is that so many of the families who live in the Ozarks today actually came from the Appalachians. About 100 or so odd years ago, a lot of miners left the coal mines of Appalachia in order to go work in the tin and the lead mines in the Ozarks. And so they brought the popular culture and the music of Appalachia to the Ozarks. And most of the immigrant families who didn't come from Appalachia came from the same countries that the original immigrants to Appalachia came from, like Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, and then that mixed in with the Native American culture that was already there. And the last connection is that the environment of the Ozarks is so similar to Appalachia that some sociologists call it Lesser Appalachia. The mountains, the hollers, the rivers, they're all so similar that I've had folks leave Appalachia, drive into northern Arkansas, and then think that they went the wrong direction because they feel like they're already back home in like Virginia or Kentucky. And so this is why Appalachia and the Ozarks are often called cousin cultures.
They say the Ozarks are full of secrets, but this one might be the state's best-kept lie. Because there's a waterfall so hidden, some locals claim the government covered up its true location to keep tourists away. Deep in the Ozark Mountains, somewhere between the Buffalo River and the old logging trails near Newton County, sits what locals call the Forgotten Falls. It's said to rival Hemden Hollow in height, but you won't find it on any official map. Old-timers say it was once a popular swimming hole in the 1950s until the area was quietly fenced off and reclassified as private conservation land. Others swear the falls were sealed off after a fatal rock slide that killed a group of hikers in the 1970s. A story no paper ever covered. Satellite images show what looks like a dry creek bed suddenly dropping into a dark green ravine. A few explorers who've tried to reach it say you can hear rushing water but never find its source, almost like the land itself wants to keep it hidden. If the Forgotten Falls are real, they'd be one of the tallest in the entire Ozark Range. So why erase them? Protection or possession?
The Ozark Mountains aren't quiet. They're watchful. Shadows linger too long. Lights move where no roads exist. And the stories locals whisper never sound like folklore. They sound like warnings. Tonight, we're stepping into the ridges and silences the Ozarks tried to hide. Turn off your lights. Put on your headphones. Pull your blanket close because after this video, you will never see the Ozark Mountains the same way again. The black mist of the Boston Mountains. They say the Boston Mountains are the darkest stretch of the Ozarks, not because the trees are thick, but because the shadows behave like they have a will of their own. Hikers talk about it in low voices, as if speaking loudly might call it back. Hunters refuse certain ridges entirely, and the old families who've lived here for generations have a name for it: the Black Mist. The first written account appears in the early 1980s, when a pair of brothers reported a low, rolling fog moving uphill against the wind. They described it as heavier than smoke, dense enough to swallow their lantern beam. One brother claimed he felt the air tighten around him, as if pressure were building inside his chest. The second said the forest fell silent, absolutely silent, not even insects clicking beneath the bark. When the mist reached the trees, the branches stopped moving. The leaves froze mid-flutter. Moments later, the fog collapsed into itself and vanished. Dozens of similar accounts followed. Bow hunters described the same phenomenon: a dark fog pooling along creek beds, rising as one single shape. Campers woke up to find the perimeter of their fire ring outlined by a black vapor that retreated the moment they sat up. A wildlife biologist who documented temperature changes in the area claimed that the air sometimes dropped 20 degrees in under 10 seconds, an impossible shift, even at the highest elevations. Beneath the rivers and ridgeal lines, there's a constant murmur, something that moves through the stone like it's alive. Locals learn to live with it. Outsiders don't. And that's why they're the ones who hear what shouldn't exist. Metal screams rising from windless caves, drifting lights in hollows with no roads, footsteps on empty trails. In some parts of these mountains, time bends. Old battlefield voices cross the valleys, and something heavy still moves at night along rail lines torn up decades ago. These aren't legends. They're documented places people avoid.
Dams destroyed the old world in the 1900s, all over the world. Buildings that don't fit in with the mainstream narrative. Towns that were so out of place, and human remains. Missouri, the Lake of the Ozarks, where more than 20 towns, villages, and settlements were permanently flooded to create the lake. Now saying that the actual number was closer to 8, where we all know that it's more than 20. We just saw that, including Irontown, Gladstown, Lynn Creek, Sagrada, Zebra, Arnold's Mill, Passover, and so many more, including Stoutsville, located in Monroe County, Victor. We have the names of these towns. Even another town named Florida was flooded. The supposed location that Mark Twain was born, all of it was submerged. It's underwater right now, and it was not just 8 towns, not even close. A massive lie yet again. Submerged and destroyed by the Bagnall Dam in 1931. With structures like this being submerged, the Phantom Steeple Church, located in a town called Old Lynn Creek, which is now, of course, underwater. This man-made lake was formed between 1929 and 1931, the exact years that we've been talking about, creating a 1,100-mile shoreline, all for some power and recreation. Or do you think that it was for something else? The Missouri Dragon is a reservoir created by impounding the Osage River in the northern part of the Ozarks with an average depth of 60 to 70 feet, where we have proof, in my opinion, that this dam was created to destroy the old world and hide what was once there. This was not just some farmland and a few ducks. This was a destruction project, just like we've seen multiple times, where we are all told that before the old town of Lynn Creek was abandoned to the rising lake in the early months of 1931, most of its 100-plus old world buildings, they were all razed, destroyed. Now, why would they destroy all of the buildings if they were just going to submerge them anyway? Did they just show us the true reason for this dam? Burning, as we've seen so many times. Burning the Christian and Baptist churches with their bell towers, old world healing bells, with the stonemasonry structures being knocked down. Why would they do this? Why would they destroy it all if they're just going to sink it? If they just needed to make a dam for some power, why would they go out of their way to ruin all of these structures? It's very clear. They were destroying the old world and needed an excuse to destroy a massive amount of old world buildings. So many buildings that they could never find another excuse to destroy besides sinking them for power and recreation, just like we're seeing right here. You can even see that there's so many old world buildings, they couldn't even submerge them all, calling this one the Ha Ha Tonka Castle, saying that they built this in the early 1900s. And it was, of course, no hesitation at all from the mainstream narrative, destroyed by a fire in 1942, just 10 years after the dam submerged all of the other old world buildings. We also know that this is a stone structure. Fires don't burn stone to the ground, which is exactly why you put stone around your fire pits. You have stone and brick fireplaces in your house. All of your neighbors don't seem to mind because they're not going anywhere from a fire. Telling us that this place is haunted, of course. We've gone over this as well. Basically just trying to keep everybody away from the old world buildings and to change the narrative about it. I'm not saying that there's no hauntings. I'm just saying that it's a good excuse to keep most people away. A lot of people don't like to hear that the place is haunted. They're not going to just go wandering over there on a walk. Supposedly built in 1905 by Robert Snyder, where he's dead in 1906. 1 year later, and the castle was completed by the sons. We know about the supposed builders dying during the construction projects. This is a classic story that we have all heard so many times. I believe this is a fake story. You can always believe whatever you'd like. So if this is the building that we find on a cliff, unable to be submerged, needing to destroy it in 1942 with a supposed fire, with no mention of who and how it burned a stone building to the ground, then what else do you think is under all that water? Lake of the Ozarks, an incredible site for our research. Now a massive summer destination with over 3 million visitors each year. They're all just jumping into the water every year, the same water that is documented by the Union Electric and other historical summaries to have approximately 2,800 graves inside of it. Over 60 known cemeteries located in the areas that were flooded. So many old world individuals were found in this location and needed to be submerged inside that massive body of water, with 1,121 burial sites being identified with tombstones, meaning there could easily be 1,600 bodies or more, just like we said. There are many, many more, in my opinion, underneath that lake that were never relocated. And I would bet so many of these people visiting have no idea what's in that water. And I was about to book a trip and go there and maybe take a look around. But I'm glad I just double checked to see how many bodies are in that water before jumping in and having a good time. I'm glad I know what's under the water now. Lake of the Ozarks is no longer just a random pool. It's exposed for what it is. It is a massive destruction site, ruining the old world and a huge burial ground with possibly thousands of people in the water. All documented, and there is no doubt about it. All of the towns that we mentioned, they're not spread across the entire state of Missouri. They're all right next to each other, destroying all of their buildings before the flood and submerging the ruins, along with the burials. It is so weird and it's shocking. And this happened in the 1930s, not 500 years ago. Yet it was never talked about in History 101, 102, or the Donkeys Incorporated class on Tuesdays that told us all about the huts of the 1890s, the Oregon Trail, just taking it one step at a time through the rigid trails with no water and just living off of mama's chicken pot pie, heating it all up by rubbing 2 sticks together, all just to die from a disease in the 1800s. Hiking through ponds and making little Johnny push through the mud because Seabiscuit just couldn't get it up the hill. Finally, they would arrive and build a church castle in a year, population of 14, and then submerging their castle churches 30 years later. No training, no power tools, and this was no problem. They would light their castle church on fire, reminder it's stone, and then they would call it a day. It all checks out. And the mainstream narrative is just on it. Here we found a photo of Lynn Creek pre-dam showing the Camden County Bank building. Yet another building that looks so out of place for this time period. The book is called Before the Dam Water by T. Victor Jeffries. People just report seeing things all over the place. Massive stone structures all along the lake as you go through the massive coastline. Can you even imagine what is really under all that water? What was submerged in the 1930s before we ever got to investigate the area? Where the Lake of the Ozarks now covers approximately 2.35 billion square feet of surface area. Land that used to be churches, homes, and cemeteries, just like we said. How many chambers or tunnels? How many caves? How many crazy things would blow our mind today if it was still there? They were found in this location. How many artifacts are underneath that lake now? Where a 2020 archaeology review highlights that the Middle Osage River Valley lost much cultural context during dam construction. Well, of course it did. It's all under the water. We know this. And no formal archaeological investigations were ever conducted. The entire area was, of course, undocumented by the mainstream history. It was not studied. They destroyed everything they could, demolishing old world buildings, and didn't want us to ever see it. They didn't want any of us to ever question it again or wonder what was originally there. I do believe things are still there. It's a massive amount of land. We know they left the dead. We know they're under that water, submerging massive structures that do not belong in our timeline, doing it all within the last 100 years in every single country. And of course, 30 miles southeast of Las Vegas that has submerged old world buildings, towns, explaining it all away by saying they needed to turn a light bulb on. It's all so interesting. And the Invalids Hotel, a healing hotel, we were told in a stipulation, they were basically no longer allowed to call themselves doctors or medical men. They were no longer able to give medical advice. Not being able to call themselves doctors or call their advice medical advice must have been a lethal blow a little over a year later, where in my opinion, this was the end of this old world medicine, old world healing powers. But right here in the Ozarks, we see it yet again. The Welsh Hospital. It looks so out of place, and they clearly missed it when they were on their hunt of destruction. Also not submerged, a hospital or a resort. They can't seem to figure out what this was, because they didn't build it, in my opinion. They found it. Using it for all kinds of things, we were told. A campsite, power supplies, resorts, and even hospitals. We're in 1913, 18 years before the flood. We are told that this doctor bought this place. He believed that the spring water had healing properties. This location would be perfect to heal asthma, emphysema, and tuberculosis. And he said that it worked. They said that he was the builder of the structure. I don't believe that one bit. The master builder doctor of the 1913s in the middle of the forest. He was the finder. He found a health spa, an old world location that was dammed up so that the water would close off and force more air out through the cave opening into the hospital. A science and construction method that we do not use today. Not even close. A way to breathe the fresh air of the cave. It was so successful that it was known as a healing resort. Expanding the cabins and a campground. Times were so hard and travel was so difficult to get to remote places like this apparently. Yet constructing this place with no problem at all. Getting all the stones to the site from a random unknown location into the middle of the trees in the forest. This was no problem at all for this guy. The shipping company, which is fully undocumented, the architect, this doctor, of course, the construction team, who knows who it was. Dr. Dahl did it all. According to the mainstream narrative, he had it all covered. This guy shows up from Illinois. He finds a cave in the middle of nowhere and he buys the land for $800. Dams the spring, and then builds a stone and concrete hospital into the side of the ridge without any equipment and no electricity, no contractors, and it's still standing today. Just a random Illinois doctor in 1913. He was just out there smacking that cliff perfectly to quarry that stone, creating foundations, and then building the water diverting dam to force cave air into the hospital. No construction crew ever documented, no blueprints. How about no? A much more logical explanation is that this guy found this structure, and it was from the old world, and then he built the campsite around it. It was already there, and this is not the work of some random doctor. No construction background. This guy was not a builder. We are even told right here. This is all according to the National Park Service, an official website of the U.S. government, by the way, so you can check it out yourself. But right here, and you can't make this up, it's located in the Ozarks, where it was rough and unpaved, making it difficult to even get to the location. I'm blown away. And the good doctor died in 1940. The family didn't even want the resort after he died, where many people at the time believed in the healing qualities of the cave air and spring water, an incredible location, a massive vacation destination that millions of people don't fully understand today. And they're going to be swimming in it all summer. Old world structures below their feet in the dark, bodies buried below them. And they have no idea that they're there. A location that was completely destroyed, finding ruins all along the side of this water. This happened all over the world, destroying our true history. And did anybody see what the national park said right here at the bottom? Years earlier than 1913, a tuberculosis sanitarium had been built or found in Mammoth Cave, some 300 feet underground. And we are just getting started. I guarantee it.
Hidden just off the road in southwest Missouri, not far from Branson, you can find access to a true chamber of secrets, Riverluff Cave, a cave that was sealed off from the rest of the world over 500,000 years ago. Access to the cave is protected by a metal barricade and 2 locked metal doors. And that's because of the treasures inside, not just fossils like this mammoth tibia and a mammoth molar from a young juvenile mammoth. But what's really impressive about this cave is the fact that once it was sealed off over 500,000 years ago from the rest of the world, the tracks that were inside, they were preserved. So hundreds of these tracks of pigs, peccaries actually, now extinct, no longer walking this planet, but their tracks are there. There's also large cat tracks, either from an American lion or a saber-toothed cat. But these are the most impressive tracks. They actually make it almost 15 feet up the side of the cave. These are the tracks from a short-faced bear. And it's not just claw marks that capture the behaviors of these giant bears. You can even find over a dozen of their beds within the cave, many of those beds with feces that could one day be tested by scientists. Shortly after its discovery, some teenagers actually went in and vandalized the cave. They ended up getting 3 years of jail time, I believe, but that's one of the reasons today there is so much security there. And the story of this cave, the fact that we even know about it, let's get into that. The cave was revealed during construction of the road, and the explosives were actually put there to be detonated the morning of September 11th, 2001. This put them in a weird spot, a spot you never really expect to have to be in, because that morning the Twin Towers would be hit, and things here in the United States would briefly be put on pause, including the use of explosions. So they weren't able to do like the full-on explosion that they planned on doing, but they had already set the explosives and couldn't leave them there. So they ended up doing that smaller explosion to be done with it, and coincidentally, it revealed this cave, and that is the story of this cave so far. Very little amount of scientific literature about it up to this point. In the future, hopefully more excavations. They tell more of the story of this cave. But for right now, it's just this amazing little time capsule hidden away in southwest Missouri.
The forest consists of 1.5 million acres in the Ozark Highlands. It's full of sparkling clear natural springs, over 5,000 caves, and it also sits on top of the dreaded New Madrid fault line. This national forest really is an exceptional place. It contains areas of the Ozarks which have never been underwater and rose above the prehistoric seas that used to cover most of this area. There are some areas that were never glaciated during the Ice Age, and today it still contains some of the most remote and hard to reach areas in the Ozarks. So it's really no wonder that such a place has a long history of mysteries and legends. It's been said that the national forest was once inhabited by witches, and that it is guarded by hellhounds, which there are many accounts of visitors having terrifying experiences with. Bigfoot sightings have also been reported, along with werewolf or dogman sightings. But one of the most interesting stories to me is of a hidden ancient place, now known as the Missouri Mystery Mound. In the early 1990s, a man named Charles Teague was listening to Coast to Coast Radio with Art Bell. I love Coast to Coast. When Art interviewed a Native American shaman who called in, who claimed that he had been taken to a hidden hall of records within an ancient temple hidden underneath a mountain.
I'm treasure hunting in Rush, Arkansas, which is an old mining town. It had a mining boom between the 1880s and just after World War II, started in 1920, and now it's a ghost town. It was bustling at one point. I'm treasure hunting here. I'm starting to find signs of life. Look at this guy. Look at that. That's beautiful. That's period. It's light as a feather. That's period. That's 1880s. That's English. That was owned by somebody that had money. Probably important. You see that? That's pretty. I'm treasure hunting near the ghost town of Rush, Arkansas, in the Buffalo Point National Forest. And I'm finally starting to see signs of life. That's period. That's from the 1880s. That's original to the site. That's English. It's beautiful. Yeah. Here, look. That's probably from a medicine bottle. That looks like it's from a medicine bottle right at the side. Huh. That is crazy.
They didn't build stories about fairies in the Ozarks. They built them around caves. When the Scots-Irish settlers came into these hills, they carried old world warnings with them. Not about winged creatures exactly, about beings that lived beneath the earth. In the Celtic lands, caves and mounds were doorways, places where the hidden ones moved between worlds. And here in the Ozarks, we have thousands of caves carved through limestone and water. cold air that breathes, stone that hums, dark that feels alive. The Old Norse spoke of the Sather, a trance wisdom practiced in hidden places, often in earth chambers and sacred ground. You didn't enter those places casually. You didn't whistle in them. You didn't mock them, because some knowledge was meant to be approached slowly. And some places remember who walks inside. Maybe they weren't fairies. Maybe they were the intelligence of the land itself. And the hills still keep that boundary.
Hi, I'm Lynn. I live in a small town in Arkansas. And I hope you'll forgive me. I knew that I was going to be scared to death, and I wrote the whole thing. So I'm just going to read it. 21 years ago, on a warm, sunny day, a family member and I had attended to some business in a large city in central Arkansas. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we left the city to begin the trip home, a trip of approximately 3 hours. We were both relaxed and in a pleasant mood. After 2 hours of driving time, we approached a small town. A road crew was doing some blasting on the highway that day and signaled the traffic in our lane to stop. We were the lead car, and there were 3 or 4 other cars behind us. After clearing the road, the crew allowed us to continue, and we slowly approached our turn at the junction of an intersecting highway. We both recalled seeing the turn, and then everything went blank. After an interval of grogginess, we suddenly found ourselves on an unfamiliar paved road with no road signs or other indicators of our location. The road appeared new and unused. Both of us were extremely agitated and began looking for a turnaround, hoping we would find familiar territory by turning back. We finally found a very small area that allowed us to turn the car in the opposite direction. After several minutes, we entered the town from the wrong direction, but we had not driven through the town to get there. We finally made our turn onto the intersecting highway and continued the drive toward home, extremely puzzled about what had just happened to us. The area was very rural, and the road was lined with large trees. Both of us felt a sense of unease and a desire to get home as soon as possible. After we drove a short distance, I glanced out the left-hand window and saw a silver object in the sky that seemed to be pacing us. I pointed it out to my family member who was driving. Neither of us could determine any identifying marks and heard no sound, although our windows were rolled down. We both wanted it to be an airplane, even though it had no wings or tail. I watched the craft for several minutes, and it continued pacing us, sometimes briefly hidden from view behind the large trees. Eventually, I looked away from the object, and when I looked again, it had disappeared. When we arrived home, we realized that we had lost about an hour of time somewhere during the trip. We told other family members of the strange occurrence and even returned to the town shortly afterward, specifically to try to locate the peculiar road we'd been on that day. Both of us recalled reaching the turn in the road and having a tremendous force physically lift our automobile into the air, with us still inside, unable to move. After a short period of time, we found ourselves in a round, seamless room with a domed ceiling. I reported that my family member and I were separated at this point as I was led down a hall. My family member stated seeing me led off down a long hallway by 3 alien beings, one smaller than I and 2 about my height. I was taken into a brightly lit room where a physical examination and other medical procedures were performed. My family member was shown several rooms during this time, as if receiving a tour of the craft. Finally, after a period of time, I was taken into another room where I rejoined my family member. We were released shortly afterward and re-entered our car, apparently having been placed on the wrong side of town. We turned on the engine and drove off, soon realizing that we were in unfamiliar territory. From that point on, our conscious memories had taken over. My questions had been answered, and the events of that lost hour were no longer missing. Several of my family members and I have explored many other shared and individual encounters in the past year, both consciously remembered and through the use of hypnosis. Invariably, the shared encounters have contained corroborative information. These encounters have occurred during both day and night. In my family, at least, the abduction phenomenon appears to be intergenerational and ongoing. It has shattered my complacency and belief in a small world view and has forced me to see things in a more cosmic frame of reference.
I'm walking in this state park, and I swear to God, I feel like I'm in a movie or a video game. It's so magical. The energy here is unbelievable. I feel like, listen. Holy. What? It's so clear. The grass is underwater. And the fog, oh my God.
Hey y'all, look at these rocks right here in front of me. Look at all that. I'm gonna zoom out so you can see. Yeah, and then coolness over there, waterfall. So here's the deal. I walk along these, like, on the edge, and I always marvel at them, but I always also think, when are they just gonna break loose? Because they're just fields of boulders down at the bottom. So, I don't know, pretty cool. Pretty cool. And then that whole outcropping over there, you got a bluff up top. Waterfall, very cool.
What this sheriff found in the Ozarks was truly horrifying. In 1974, Sheriff Dale Brennan worked in a small county near the Missouri-Arkansas border where the Ozarks were remote and dangerous. Between May and August, 7 hikers vanished from the same trail with no bodies, no camps, just cars at trailheads. Surviving hikers reported strange bleating sounds at night, like a goat, but deeper. Brennan organized search parties and found unusual tracks, hoof prints from rear hooves only, as if something walked upright on hind legs. Brennan took 2 deputies into the woods. 3 miles in, they heard something large crash through undergrowth. They glimpsed a figure through trees standing over 7 feet tall, covered in matted fur with legs bent backwards like a goat's, curved horns on its head. It stared at them, then bolted. They followed tracks to a cave. Inside were backpacks, camping gear, torn clothing, several sets of belongings from missing hikers. Deputies called for backup, but by the time help arrived, it was gone. Tracks led into deeper wilderness, too dangerous to follow. Brennan filed his report, but left out what they'd seen. He knew no one would believe a creature like that existed, and his deputies refused to go back. The next summer, 3 more hikers vanished 20 miles north. Same pattern, same sounds, but no one went looking. Case files were marked inactive. Some things in the Ozarks were better left alone.
Please stop what you're doing. This is about a missing person. This video is very important. Please watch. This is Amanda Marie Rogers. She is from Eldon, Missouri, and on January 26th, she was going from Eldon, Missouri to Camdenton, Missouri, which is about a 30 to 45-minute drive, depending on traffic, to go pick up her kids, and she never showed up. There have been reports that her car was seen on the side of Highway 54, which is the route from Eldon to Camdenton, but nobody has seen her. There's been a few reports that maybe she was seen. They saw a car that looked like her car in Springfield and in Jeff City, but no actual definite sightings of her. Now, she does have a tattoo right here that looks like a butterfly. It's Medusa and Maleficent. And it's a fairly new tattoo. She just got it probably a few weeks ago. She is a wonderful mother. Her kids are her world. So she would not just up and leave. She wouldn't just vanish. And that's what's happened. So please, if anybody has seen her or you know her whereabouts or you've seen the vehicle, please contact Camden County Sheriff's Office in Camden County, Missouri, and give them the information that you have. Please, she's been missing for almost 6 days and nobody has any idea. Like, nobody knows where she's at. And this is actually kind of close to home because I do know her. I'm not friends with her, but I worked with her years ago and I'm friends with friends of hers. So please, get this out, push this out. We must find her. Thank you and God bless.
Search and rescue log 44-21. Location: Ozark Mountains. Male, 32. Experienced hiker. Entered cave system alone at 1410. Vehicle located next morning. Entry tunnel intact. Rope markers placed correctly. At 312 feet, the markers stop. Not broken. Not lost. Coiled. Chamber 14 lies another 200 feet beyond that point. It is not open to the public. Narrow limestone descent. 4-foot ceiling clearance. You cannot stand upright inside it. He was found there. On his back, arms at his sides, helmet light on, battery at 64%. No trauma, no defensive wounds, no hemorrhaging. Mouth slightly open, eyes fixed upward. The ceiling clearance above his face, 11 inches. There was nothing visible above him. Air quality normal. No toxic exposure, no animal disturbance, minor abrasions on both shoulders. Consistent with downward pressure, not upward struggle. The public report ends there. The internal addendum does not. When responders removed the body, they documented moisture falling from the ceiling. Not dripping, falling in thin vertical lines, as if disturbed. One rescuer reported feeling contact above his helmet. He assumed it was rock. When he checked his footage later, there's a moment, 3 seconds, where the camera tilts up, and something shifts against the limestone, not falling, not crawling, repositioning. The footage corrupted immediately after. Chamber 14 has since been sealed, officially due to structural instability. But it has always been structurally sound. So if you've ever slept in a room with a low ceiling, lie flat on your back. Turn off the lights. Hold your phone 11 inches above your face and stare into the dark space above it.
Ancient race which lived before pyramids discovered in the Mississippi Valley. Arizona Republican, Phoenix, Arizona, June 29, 1899. And Evening Star, Washington, D.C., March 22, 1899. Lost metropolis of the Mound builders. In the late 19th century, explorer and civil engineer Major Lamar Fontaine claimed to have discovered the ruins of the largest prehistoric city on Earth. He placed this lost metropolis of the mysterious mound builders across parts of Ashley, Desha, and Drew counties. It lay in the fertile Yazoo Delta region, where Arkansas overlaps the wider Yazoo Basin. Fontaine reported surveying a vast area about 35 miles east to west, and at least 25 miles northward. This covered some 500,000 acres or more, with the mounds extending even farther beyond his measured lines. He claimed the entire landscape was blanketed with tumuli, averaging around 4 mounds per acre. These earthworks created a tumult that, in his view, could have housed a population larger than modern New York, Chicago, London, and Paris combined. Excavations revealed clear signs of habitation, fireplaces, shattered cooking pots, and charred bones from deer, bear, turkey, squirrel, and fish. Many mounds stood roughly 5 to 30 feet high and enclosed 25 to more than 40 acres. They were often arranged in what Fontaine described as military formations. Some contained built-in cisterns for water storage that he interpreted as defensive or strategic features. The surrounding Yazoo Delta lowlands showed intensive ancient agriculture, with thousands of canals for both irrigation and navigation etched into nearly every acre. He described pottery factories producing superior earthenware, along with extensive shell middens along the waterways. In one of his most unusual claims, he said dugout cypress boats were found filled with jars of extinct bivalve shells. These shells had been brought from the distant Lake Bourne area near New Orleans and used as timber in the pottery. From the density of dwellings implied by the mounds, Fontaine estimated an astonishing population of about 11 million people, assuming 5 inhabitants per structure. He believed this Arkansas complex was the grand central metropolis of the mound builders. It was tied to a network of similar mounds and circumvallations stretching from the Appalachians to the Rockies. Elegant pottery, pipes, ornaments, and tools from comparable sites elsewhere supported his view of a sophisticated, vanished civilization. Its monuments still dotted the American landscape. Fontaine proposed these builders had migrated from ancient population centers in East Asia through the Aleutian chain and down the western side of North America into the Mississippi Valley. Their trail ended in northern Mexico, with no continuation into South America. Their bones, canals, and mounds in Arkansas marked the heart of their culture. Contemporary scientists of his day were fascinated, but cautious. They waited for more systematic excavation and evidence beyond Fontaine's surveys and bold estimates. No modern work has confirmed a single 11 million person city in Arkansas. Today, archaeologists attribute the mounds and canal systems of southeast Arkansas to indigenous cultures such as those of the Mississippian and related traditions. This includes the Plum Bayou phase that produced sites like Toltech mounds. Still, Fontaine's tale of a colossal prehistoric metropolis in Ashley, Desha, and Drew counties remains one of Arkansas's most dramatic 19th century legends. It is a towering mystery of the Delta, where scattered real mounds and earthworks continue to inspire stories of a lost civilization beneath the fields. This story was a combination of 3 different articles. Number 16, Fontaine's Lecture, The Democratic Banner, Mount Vernon, Ohio, October 27, 1911. In Little Rock, Arkansas, on October 26th, renowned explorer and traveler, Colonel Lamar Fontaine of Leon, Mississippi, delivered a startling theory. Having journeyed across the Americas, Asia, and Africa, he declared that the ancient mound-building culture of the Mississippi Valley was not a minor or isolated people. This civilization flourished in North America ages before the foundations of the pyramids were laid. The great earthworks scattered across Arkansas were crude pyramids built for ceremonial and religious purposes, much like the stone monuments along the Nile. Fontaine located the heart of this forgotten metropolis on the west bank of the Mississippi River, above the highest floodwaters and opposite the widest part of its delta. He described it as the largest city the world has ever known, sprawling across Drew, Desha, Ashley, and neighboring Arkansas counties. Vast population and reach. This vanished urban center once housed as many as 20 million mound builders. They sustained themselves on fish from the Mississippi River and Gulf of Mexico, bountiful crops from the fertile Yazoo Delta, which he called their garden, and the rich prairies and bottomlands of Arkansas and Texas. From this Arkansas-Mississippi core, colonies radiated outward, westward to the Zuni Plateau, southward into Mexico, Central America, and South America, and ultimately across the ocean to the mouth of the Nile, around 4,000 years before the Christian era. Fontaine saw in the trail of mounds and earthworks a steady southward progression of civilization, with each stage showing clear advancement. This culminated in the grandeur of ancient Egypt. Arkansas remains one of the most fertile fields for archaeological discovery on the continent, with new finds continually emerging. Intriguing relics and clues. Relics recovered from the mounds include artifacts scattered across the Mississippi Valley and interior of the state, while countless flint arrowheads, war axes, and tools are attributed to later indigenous peoples. Far older and stranger remains have also surfaced. Pottery of undoubted prehistoric origin, heavy bones, and skulls described in early accounts as belonging to a distinct people of whom no other written record survives. One particularly intriguing feature lies in Pike County, where a large round-topped hill is composed in its upper layers of disintegrated and solidified oyster shells and other crustacean remains. This suggests that in distant Pleistocene times, a vast inland sea, the precursor to today's Gulf of Mexico, extended far northward into Arkansas, possibly reaching as far as the site of present-day Little Rock. These enduring Arkansas enigmas, colossal earthworks, mysterious relics, and geological clues to a transformed landscape continue to whisper of a profound antiquity. They position the natural state as a crucial, yet still largely unexplored link to the deepest origins of human civilization. This story was a combination of 3 different newspaper articles. Number 17. Earth House Dwellers of Arkansas. The Gazette, Cleveland, Ohio, August 25, 1923. Tulsa Daily World, Tulsa, Indian Territory, Oklahoma, August 1, 1915. Earth House Dwellers of Arkansas. In the late 19-teens, an archaeological expedition from the University of Oklahoma, led by historian Joseph B. Thoburn and geologist Dr. Irving Perrine, investigated puzzling natural mounds across the southern plains. Their 2-year survey centered in eastern Oklahoma counties like LeFlore and McCurtain. It transformed ideas about similar low, round mounds found in practically all of Arkansas and many adjoining states, revealing evidence for a lost farming civilization that predated known tribes such as the Osages and Quapaws by centuries. These mounds had long been dismissed as slight natural rises or vague platforms for dry wigwams. But excavation told a very different story. Each low, dome-shaped tumulus, typically 6 to 100 feet in diameter and 6 inches to 4 feet high, often averaging 3 per acre and sometimes 5 or 6 in dense clusters, proved to be the collapsed ruin of a timber-framed, dome-shaped, turf-covered dwelling. Thoburn described a vanished group of earth house people, distinct from classic mound builders or cave dwellers. They built fixed villages rather than roaming as nomadic hunters. Inside the mounds, the team uncovered fireplaces with ashes, flint flakes, bone fragments, and a wealth of daily artifacts. Artistic, beautifully decorated pottery ranked among the finest of any indigenous people in the United States. Stone tools, spades, hoes, and other implements, chipped, pecked, drilled, and polished from flint, chert, and slate, showed a high degree of craftsmanship. These villagers clearly relied on agriculture, cultivating fertile prairies and valley lands, and likely excelled in basketry, spinning, and weaving, even though such perishable materials rarely survived. When the focus shifts to Arkansas, the scale becomes even more striking. Thoburn noted that these low, circular earth house mounds are a pronounced feature of landscapes across essentially the entire state, from the Ozarks to the Delta, where thousands of knolls dot the fields, pastures, and river bottoms. Vast ancient cemeteries along rivers and creeks, including reports of a burial ground stretching for a mile along an Arkansas river valley, point to populations far denser than later historic tribes, all choosing the sandy loam of floodplains for easy grave digging. Thoburn estimated that this civilization had vanished at least 600 years earlier, roughly in the 1300s, possibly swept away by a devastating plague or epidemic. No clear traditions of these people survived among later tribes, leaving only their earth houses, their tools, and their cemeteries to hint at who they were. He even suggested they might have originated from Mexico and been ancestral to Caddoan peoples like the Pawnees and Arikaras, with the partial rings of excavated Arkansas and Oklahoma lodges echoing the lodge circles still visible on the Great Plains. Modern researchers have debated the true nature of many of these features in Arkansas, with some labeling them sand mounds, prairie knolls, or pimple mounds, and proposing natural origins such as ant activity or soil processes. At the same time, archaeological sites like the Plum Bayou, or Toltech, mounds near Scott, and other Mississippian and Caddo farming villages across the state confirm that prehistoric agricultural peoples really did build earthworks and lived in substantial timber and earth structures between roughly 650 and 1300 AD. The tension between natural feature explanations and Thoburn's human-built earth house theory keeps these low mounds a living ancient mystery of Arkansas. Are they merely quirks of the land, or the faded footprints of a lost civilization of farmers who once blanketed the state's valleys and prairies with turf-covered homes? This story was a combination of 2 different articles. Number 18, Toltec Mound's Royal Tomb. The Montgomery Advertiser, Montgomery, Alabama, March 27, 1927. In Lonoke County, just southeast of Little Rock, the great earthworks known as the Toltec Mounds rise above the Arkansas River bottomlands, guarding one of the state's most enigmatic royal tombs. Once part of a complex of roughly 24 mounds spread over about 80 to 100 acres, these towering earthworks are now all that remain of a prehistoric ceremonial center. Its original builders left no written name, and their descendants vanished centuries before Europeans arrived. In the early 20th century, Mrs. Bernice Babcock, writer, antiquities enthusiast, and president of the Arkansas Museum of Natural History and Antiquities, secured rare permission from landowners William and Heber McLaughlin to explore the largest surviving mound on the site. This massive structure, weathered down to roughly 70 to 80 feet high and about 120 feet across, was widely believed to encase the remains of an ancient elite house or tomb. It had been fiercely protected from relic hunters with armed guards and posted warnings after vandals dug pits as deep as 8 feet into its flanks. Earlier digging on smaller mounds by Professor J. H. Reynolds of Hendrix College had already turned up closely packed skeletons, hinting at a sacred burial landscape beneath the grassy slopes. Chance excavations near the big mound uncovered bear claws, deer horns, animal bones, and fragments of polished pottery, suggesting both ritual offerings and everyday life intertwined at the site. Determined to avoid further destruction and to treat the mound as a scientific treasure rather than a curiosity, Babcock arranged and financed a professional base-to-summit excavation under archaeologist C.T. Prescott, known for his work in Mexico, with carefully engineered support shafts meant to preserve the stability of the ancient earthwork. Babcock's campaign at Toltech was more than a single dig. It was part of a broader vision to save Arkansas's antiquities from the shovel and the plow. She championed plans for $1 million museum in Little Rock, complete with crystal alcoves and dramatic displays of prehistoric finds, backed by prominent Arkansans, such as former Governor George Donaghy and pearl expert Richard Buchholz. In her telling, Toltech was no mere ruin, but a royal necropolis of a vanished people, a key to Arkansas's forgotten past that had to be opened carefully and preserved for future generations. Modern archaeology places Toltech within what is now called the Plum Bayou culture, a farming society that flourished in central Arkansas between about AD 650 and 1050. These Plum Bayou people built up to 18 mounds around a broad ceremonial plaza, some nearly 50 feet high, carefully aligned with solstices and celestial events to mark the agricultural calendar for crops like maygrass, barley, squash, and sunflowers in the rich floodplains along the Arkansas River and Plum Bayou. Small villages scattered through the bottomlands likely gathered here for seasonal rituals and feasts, leaving behind middens rich with deer bone, fish remains, and nutshells that testify to a mixed economy of hunting, farming, and river foraging. By around AD 1050, the Plum Bayou people had abandoned Toltech, leaving no obvious signs of catastrophic war or starvation, only the quiet transition to later Mississippian cultures who seem to have respected the old earthworks as hallowed ground. Today, the great royal mound that Bernice Babcock sought to open stands as both an archaeological site and an Arkansas legend. Stories of royal tombs, guarded treasure, and mysterious burials overlap with the very real achievements of a lost community of sky-watching farmers along the Plum Bayou. This was a combination of 2 articles and a website. Number 19. Exotic Vases from an Ancient Arkansas Mound. Albuquerque Morning Journal, Albuquerque, New Mexico, August 14, 1906. Captain C.W. Riggs, dubbed Silver Hat by Navajo Indians, was an archaeologist who explored prehistoric sites across the United States. His work included cliff dwellings in Colorado and New Mexico, mounds in the Mississippi Valley, and a massive pyramidal mound in Tennessee covering 40 acres. Over 25 years, he unearthed thousands of skeletons and artifacts now in museums, preferring well-preserved bones over tales of buried treasure, and he warned of bogus relics flooding the market. In Arkansas, Riggs made one of his most puzzling discoveries in a mound topped with trees at least 500 years old. He found 4 large vases adorned with exquisitely carved heads resembling those of people from the Malay or Japanese regions, with one vase broken by ancient tree roots. This find raised questions about the mound builders' origins, as scientists debated their identity, with Riggs noting biblical theories as plausible amid uncertainties. Number 20. Ancient Origins of Arkansas Mounds Revealed in Bureau Explorations. Grant County Herald, Lancaster, Wisconsin, August 13, 1885. Under the direction of Professor Cyrus Thomas for the Bureau of Ethnology, systematic excavations of Native American mounds across the eastern United States in the late 1880s added thousands of specimens annually. This included work at a notable East Tennessee mound measuring 220 feet long, 185 feet wide, and 8 feet high. That Tennessee site yielded 91 skeletons at varying depths, quantities of beads including genuine pearl ones, finely polished chisel-shaped stone celts, a delicate bone awl likely used for sewing buckskin, a human forearm bone fashioned into a tool or ornament, 4 hollow copper balls resembling tinkling sleigh bells, buffalo teeth, cut seashells, and stone masks. Researchers now believe the oldest mounds date to those in Ohio and Arkansas. Specimens were collected from sites in multiple states including Arkansas, highlighting the state's role in preserving some of the earliest evidence of these ancient burial and ceremonial structures. These were built by ancestors of historic Native American tribes. Number 21. Prehistoric burial unearthed in Polk County. Farmer's plow reveals ancient Indian pot and bone in Ouachita Mounds. In the early 20th century, while plowing his farm on rural Route 3 near Mena in Polk County, Arkansas, in the Ouachita Mountains region, farmer James Swiger made a remarkable discovery in what is believed to be an ancient indigenous mound. After cultivating the same field for over 20 years, gradually leveling the mound to match surrounding ground, his plow finally struck deep enough to uncover an intact earthen pot. This was a fine example of early Native American craftsmanship, found alongside a human bone. Swiger brought the bone to Mena, where Dr. P.R. Watkins identified it as a metatarsal from the left foot. The farmer speculated it once belonged to an indigenous leader, adding to the site's aura of prehistoric significance. This accidental find highlights the lingering mysteries beneath Arkansas's western farmlands, where countless low mounds, often plowed flat over generations, once served as burial sites for ancient inhabitants of the region. Modern archaeology attributes such mounds in the Ouachitas to Caddo or earlier cultures, with pottery and flexed burials common, though many have been lost to farming. This discovery in Polk County near Mena, a historic town in the Ouachita National Forest area, stands as a classic small-scale Arkansas ancient find. Number 22. Footprints of vanished races. The Bolivar Bulletin. Bolivar, Hardeman County, Tennessee, October 2nd, 1879. In his 1879 book, Footprints of Vanished Races in the Mississippi Valley, archaeologist A.J. Conant explores the relics and monuments left by prehistoric peoples, often referred to as mound builders, across the region. He provides evidence of advanced ancient civilizations through earthworks, pottery, and symbolic artifacts. The broader narrative covers the entire Mississippi Valley, from Ohio to Louisiana, describing massive mounds, enclosures, and symbolic carvings that suggest a sophisticated society with agricultural, military, and religious practices, long predating known Native American tribes. Focusing on Arkansas, Conant highlights numerous sites in the state's eastern delta and river valleys. For instance, near Carthage, likely referring to areas along the Red River in southwest Arkansas, he notes similar walled enclosures as those found elsewhere, built with clay and earth, possibly for defense or ceremonial purposes. Along the Arkansas River and tributaries like the Red River, he documents mounds and footprints embedded in rock formations, interpreted as traces of these vanished peoples. These include large earthen structures, some with internal chambers containing pottery and tools, suggesting dense settlements in fertile lowlands. Conant speculates these Arkansas relics connect to a broader migration or cultural network, with footprints and mounds offering clues to rituals and daily life. Yet their builders remain enigmatic, vanishing without written records. Modern archaeology links these to Mississippian cultures, for example at sites like Toltech Mounds near Scott, Arkansas. But Conant's vivid accounts fueled 19th century fascination with Arkansas's prehistoric past. Number 23. Stone Age relics and mounds in southwest Arkansas's mountains and valleys. DeQueen B., DeQueen, Arkansas, January 29, 1915. An expedition documented by E.S. Byington in the Sharp County Record surveyed the Arkansas-Oklahoma border for evidence of prehistoric Stone Age peoples, or mound builders. Archaeologist Professor Warren K. Moorhead of Phillips Academy and colleagues uncovered relics hinting at multiple ancient cultures. They recommended further large-scale digs. The team briefly left E.H. Jacobs at Spiro, Oklahoma, to investigate reported skeletons and pots in a railroad cut. Crossing into Oklahoma sites like Eagletown and Broken Bow yielded additional village sites and relics, including test holes at a Little River site west of Bismarck for pots and skeletons. The expedition's core discoveries centered in southwest Arkansas, starting from Fort Smith in Sebastian County as base. Near Locksburg in Sevier County, they inspected and photographed big mounds on Sycamore Creek 5 miles north. There they found arrow points, celts, hammers, and village sites. From Dierks to Athens in Howard and Pike counties, they collected 25 to 30 pounds of relics along the Little Missouri River. They also documented prehistoric flint mines and river cliffs, ancient quarries for tool-making materials. East of Ultima Thule in Sevier County, they found old salt works with potsherds from massive 30-inch vessels, used for boiling salt water. This indicated long-term industrial activity by indigenous peoples. On Mountain Fork near the border, numerous village sites emerged with a big load of relics. These Arkansas finds, amid primeval forests and volcanic mountains lacking caves, revealed footprints of vanished races through implements for war, farming, hunting, and domestic use, spanning several thousand years since the Stone Age. Moorhead saw signs of 4 to 5 distinct cultures. He urged study of his book, The Stone Age in North America, for deeper insights into this global era's local echoes. Number 24. Paradise found in Arkansas. The Pulaskian, Pulaski Heights, Little Rock, Arkansas, February 21st, 1919. Tucked away in hidden spots near natural steps along the Arkansas River in central Arkansas, lies a true treasure trove for curio collectors. It is a rich Quapaw indigenous burial ground from years long past. Over the last 10 or 15 years, enthusiastic excavators have unearthed stunning examples of native handiwork that now grace private collections. Discoveries range from small baked clay pipes of peace to massive ollas. These are large vessels up to a bushel in size, shaped like wide-bottomed bowls tapering to narrower necks, crafted from fine clay for storing grain like Indian corn and other daily needs. While much pottery is plain and functional, finer pieces boast etched, unusual, yet beautiful designs. The ancient artisans used secret pigments that have endured centuries underground, baffling modern clay workers with their vibrant, time-defying colors. Nearby, though separate from the burial site, stand traces of the enigmatic mound builders. These were an ancient people who somewhat resembled later indigenous groups but predated them by many years, possibly contemporaries or predecessors of the Aztecs in Central and South America. These earlier people lived communally. Several families or entire tribes shared fortified dwellings of logs or massive stones, topped with clay or earth that was fired from outside for strength and security. This created a snug retreat for storing all possessions. Over centuries, these structures collapsed under the elements, forming today's expansive mounds, some covering an acre or more. These mounds are reminders of a more energetic and enterprising civilization than the nomadic tribes that followed. Scholars speculate this ancient people succumbed to disease, ague, or conflict with later arriving indigenous groups drawn to Arkansas's fine hunting grounds and warm southern climate. This paradise found at natural steps reveals layers of Arkansas's deep prehistoric past, where Quapaw artistry and mound builder ingenuity left enduring marks along the river's timeless banks. This story was a combination of 3 different articles. Number 25. Who were the mound builders? The Osceola Times, Osceola, Arkansas, April 14, 1888. De Soto's witness. In May 1541, Hernando de Soto's expedition of 600 Spanish soldiers crossed the Mississippi River at what's now Memphis. They ascended the west bank, through modern Mississippi County, Arkansas, as far as the Missouri line, recording a land thick with native towns and fields of corn. Accompanying chronicler Luis Hernandez de Biedma noted that local caciques, or chiefs, raised very high hills near their dwellings, sometimes building huts atop them. On one such mound in this Arkansas region, the Spaniards planted a cross and knelt to venerate it. These observations, preserved in Biedma's 1544 report to the King of Spain, later translated from Spanish archives, describe the tumuli still visible today at sites like Mounds in Mississippi County, Arkansas. They were products of the agricultural people living there at the time, not a vanished prehistoric race. Biedma, an eyewitness keeping detailed notes, presented this as fact from direct inquiry, not speculation, during his time in what's now Arkansas 347 years before the letter's writing. The locals lived in walled towns, cultivating vast cornfields until fiercer northern tribes, like those from the Ohio Valley, later displaced them down the Mississippi. Later parallels reinforce this. The Natchez, whom De Soto encountered on both sides of the river, fled across to near Natchitoches after a 1730 defeat by the Choctaws. They immediately threw up a new mound, as Dr. Sibley reported in his 1804 exploration of the Arkansas and Red Rivers. Number 26. Mound Builders of Arkansas. The Menard Mounds Prehistoric Secrets Revealed. Fry Press for Texas, San Antonio, Texas, March 13, 1895. This story comes from a German-language article titled Die Mound Builders on North America's Prehistoric Mound Building Culture. Likely from a late 19th or early 20th century European scientific journal, it was written by an anonymous scholar exploring archaeological mysteries. The mound builders represent one of North America's great prehistoric enigmas. This vanished culture left massive earthworks dotting the continent, with Arkansas as a key hotspot, home to over 10,000 such structures alone. These imposing hills, often layered with earth and loose stones, take diverse forms: simple cones, terraced pyramids, or defensive walls rising 3 to 170 feet high. Their ground plans feature etched human figures, animals like fish, bears, and lizards, and even a colossal 1,000-foot serpent encircling a mound in Adams County, Ohio. Yet Arkansas examples like the striking 110-foot Maynard Mound showcase their imposing scale and bizarre shapes. These served varied purposes. Some housed stone-lined burial chambers packed with skeletons and grave goods. Others were fortified settlements, temples, or gathering sites marked by symbolic shapes. Artisans of this lost people crafted skillfully decorated pottery, bowls, cups, bottles, revealing high artistry without iron tools. They relied on stone implements and rare metals like silver and copper mined from Lake Superior deposits that traded as far south as Florida. Pipeheads carved from clay, marble, slate, or porphyry depict tattooed faces and realistic animals, like a wildcat found in Illinois. Textile fragments prove weaving skills, painting a picture of settled farmers in fertile river valleys who far outpaced later indigenous peoples in sophistication. Their unified culture thrived for centuries in Mississippi, Missouri, and Ohio basins, with Arkansas's dense clusters signaling permanent villages and agriculture, though their language, origins, and demise, likely over a millennium ago, remain unsolved riddles tied to how the New World was peopled. Number 27. Mound Builders' Graves. Giant bones and riddled bricks from Lee County, Arkansas. Public Ledger, Memphis, Tennessee, October 4, 1875. This is a late 19th century newspaper article by a scientific reporter describing artifacts excavated in July 1875 from an indigenous mound in Lee County, Arkansas, by Ed Landvoigt. The finds highlight relics tied to the enigmatic mound building culture. In July 1875, Ed Landvoigt unearthed a trove of mound builders' relics from a site in Lee County, Arkansas. These included a clay water pot, a massive 16-inch shin bone, an immense jawbone, a clay pipe, a 15-pound battle axe, a smaller axe, and 2 teeth worn flat to the gums from a female's jaw. He also found a brick with a ridged underside matching modern brick dimensions. These 3 mounds, or forts, form a triangle along a swamp edge. 2 at the base angles measure 104 and 52 yards across, linked by a high ridge to a third 210 feet wide out on the plain. Beneath them lie hundreds of bodies of both sexes, buried on their backs with heads oriented randomly, thumbs joined under their bodies, and palms pressed to the ground. These rituals hint at a structured yet mysterious funerary practice among Arkansas's prehistoric inhabitants. Number 28. Gas mounds of southern Arkansas. Natural ridges or hidden oil clues. Essex County Herald, Guildhall, Vermont, March 30th, 1922. This is a brief early 20th century newspaper snippet relaying a government geologist's analysis of gas mounds found across Louisiana, Texas, southern Arkansas, Oklahoma, forests, and prairies. Gas mounds are low, circular rises averaging 20 feet wide and 2 feet high. They dot forest and prairie landscapes in Louisiana, Texas, southern Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Local theories suggest underground gas from oil pools pushes them up, signaling potential drilling sites below. A U.S. government geologist who inspected them rejects this idea outright. He notes their presence in countless oil-free zones with no gas or petroleum traces. Instead, he attributes their formation to simple soil heaping in poorly drained lowlands battered by heavy periodic rains. These are common natural features rather than treasure maps for black gold. Number 29. Arkansas's lost Mississippian capital, visited by De Soto. Encyclopedia of Arkansas.net. Parkin Archaeological State Park in Cross County, northeast Arkansas, safeguards a 17-acre Mississippian village from AD 1000 to 1550. It sits at the St. Francis and Tyronza Rivers confluence, likely Casqui, the fortified provincial capital encountered by Hernando de Soto's expedition on July 4, 1541. Chroniclers described a stockaded town with towers, water-filled moat, excavated by archaeologists, and central flat-topped mound where De Soto planted a cross after Mass. Spanish glass beads, brass bells, and lead shot unearthed here confirm contact with the paramount chief Casqui. He ruled 20 satellite villages amid wars with rival Pakaha. Corn, beans, squash, deer, fish, and gathered nuts fueled population growth in fertile floodplains, protected by palisades until European diseases and warfare dispersed the culture. Now a National Historic Landmark with ongoing Arkansas Archaeological Survey digs, the site's museum displays pottery linking it to Parkin phase networks. Bonus story. Prehistoric ruins, echoes of Arkansas's lost city. Wyoming Weekly Republican, Sundance, Crook County, Wyoming, December 4th, 1889. While 19th century archaeologists raced to excavate the ancient wonders of Egypt, Syria, and Greece, uncovering statues, tools, and hieroglyphs, a far richer, largely untouched field of discovery lay hidden in the Americas, according to a New York Times writer. The spotlight fell on Guatemala and Yucatan, where explorers John L. Stevens and Frederick Catherwood had recently sketched over a dozen vanished cities. These featured towering, sculpted temples, pyramids, castles, and terraces from a highly advanced lost culture. These ruins revealed sophisticated knowledge of math, mechanics, and metals, with vibrant statues and unique architecture defying old world origins. Yet everyday tools and burials remained elusive, deepening the mystery of who built them and where they vanished to. Stevens himself mocked wild theories about America's peopling, from Noah's flood survivors and Atlantis to Jews, Phoenicians, Chinese, or even an ark in New York. He insisted real evidence was finally emerging from sites like Copan. He lambasted Spanish conquerors for destroying clues and locals for ignoring the ruins, while praising Humboldt's early work on Mexican pyramids like Cholula. But amid this Central American drama, Stevens dropped a tantalizing North American bombshell. He noted the opening of forests and the discovery of tumuli or mounds and fortifications extending in ranges from the lakes through the valleys of the Ohio and Mississippi, mummies in a cave in Kentucky, the inscription on the rock at Dighton, and the ruins of walls in a great city in Arkansas and Wisconsin. These American finds fueled the strong belief that powerful and populous nations had occupied the land and passed away, their histories entirely unknown. This fleeting reference to a great city in Arkansas, buried in a story about Mayan splendor, captured the era's feverish speculation. It hinted at colossal lost civilizations right in the heartland, long before modern mound builder studies like those of Lamar Fontaine brought the Delta's earthworks into sharp focus. It positioned Arkansas as a quiet cornerstone of a hemisphere-wide ancient enigma.
This isn't the beginning of some kind of scary movie.
Don't forget to subscribe and like, and as always, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.